page 119 in the Kitzer of the 7th Mimer in Kuntres U'Maayan. Oh, so the Rebbe here is explaining, the Rebbe Rashab explaining the difference between Pnimius and Acharayim, the face and the backside. The Pnimius is a not only a word, but it represents a giving with love and desire. And Acharayim is the opposite. It's like, I'm not interested. Hashem needs to do it because he wants the klippos to challenge and to give a Jew free will, etc. So now, the Rebbe in this paragraph, in this Ois chapter, he explained that the way, the Pnimius Haratzon, the way Hashem's inner will is delivered to a Jew is through Torah and mitzvahs. And he went into specifics. So let's read the Kitzer just to refresh ourselves. Kitzer, Pnimius Haratzon nimshach Yisrael, v'laydei Torah mitzvahs. Pnimius Haratzon is drawn to Israel, to Yisrael, through Torah and mitzvahs. Because the entire concept of Torah is to draw down what we call the encompassing light, or Aseviv, ba'olamos, into the worlds. Ramach mitzvahs, asay, this includes how, through the 248 positive commandments, you draw down Hashem's energy into vessels. Tefillin, tzitzis, tzedakah, sukkah, esrog. He gave us those 5 examples. Mitzvahs loisasei, and then there's the loisasei, the prohibited mitzvahs, meaning you don't do them, you're not allowed to do them. There, the way they draw down Hashem's energy is lahosher haklippos v'sitra achre hamoinim gilui nisav baruch hu. It's to, when you do a loisasei, when you don't do what Hashem says, do not do this act. What you accomplish is you remove lahasir, you remove the klippos and sitra achre, the negative energy and forces, which usually prevent godliness from being revealed. So here, you get them out of the way. Okay, so again, to summarize, mitzvahs asay brings it, it's proactive, it brings it in. Mitzvahs lo sasay, it prevents the klippa from getting in the way. Now in the next paragraph, in the next chapter, Perek Gimel, he's going to say there's also, not only mitzvahs lo sasay is there a get out of the way issue, but there's something else as well. Let's read inside. Another detail that's important to know when we fulfill a mitzvah loisasei, when you do not do something Hashem says do not do, you make it, you guard, your shomer, that Hashem's energy should not be given and drawn to a bad place. Right? Before we discussed mitzvahs loisasei, the idea is to get the clip out of the way for the or to come into the keli. God's energy needs to come into the world, come into us, to vivify us and make us alive. It's like the difference between, there's a Hayom Yom which says, Avi, interesting, there's 2 ways of health. One is strengthening the rest of your body, your immune system, and the other way is dealing with the problem, taking a medicine. It's 2 different approaches. Using that as an example, Moshe, we understand these 2 ideas. Again, within mitzvahs loisasei. One aspect that we accomplish when we do not do what Hashem doesn't want us to do, Yoni, is to what? Is to for the klippos not to get in the way and let God do what he needs to. What we're learning now in this, that we learned before, in the previous chapter, what we're learning now in this chapter is different. What we're learning now is Hashem is, through lo sasei, we make sure that Hashem's energy doesn't go to the wrong place. Because Hashem's energy, if you violate the lo sasei, you cause it to go to the wrong place. And this answers a tremendous, a very important idea. Again, going back to what we discussed it. How is it that evil, that bad gets chayas? The answer is from me, from the Jew. Not from the goy, from me. When I don't keep a mitzvah's lo sasei, I cause that Hashem's positive energy, which is supposed to go to a Jew, goes to the wrong place. And when energy goes to the wrong place, it causes a problem. It's like the Chernobyl disaster. the reactor, it blew up. There's a lot of energy, or just now in Lebanon, in Beirut, there's a lot of energy here, and if channeled right, the energy can be used for what it needs to be used, but instead, it went to the wrong place. It caused an explosion. Okay? I think that's a good mashal. Let's continue inside. And the Rebbe says, why shouldn't the energy of Hashem go to the clippers? Because they're called sonui, shenikru teyavas Hashem. They're called the hateful of God. God hates them. As it says in Tehillim, Kilo Yegur Choraksiv, evil should not dwell evil does not dwell with God. It's an oxymoron. You can't have evil and God at the same time. You're either godly or you're evil, one of the two. So klippas are essentially hateful. And we're not looking to give them more energy. Let them have the little amount that they have, Yoni. Don't give them food for thought. Don't add salt to the wound. Okay? That's the idea. Just let them be. Let's continue. Now he goes back. Again, Moshe, I point out to you, you see, he brings it right back to man. Everything, see, this is about man at the end of the day, not about philosophical concepts, fluting, tooting ideas that have no connection to us. Uva Adam. Third line. Uva Adam, who gam kain al yedehi bodli midvarim asurim. How does man accomplish that the clippers should not get energy of Hashem, more energy? It's by preventing himself, hibodloi, from the word havdalah, midvarim asurim, from preventing himself from doing prohibited things, ukshurim b'de'achitzainim, that are bound to the extraneous forces, she'en lehem aliyah l'mayla, that have no ascent above. Why not? Ki lo yishkem b'mayro liki. Godly light will not dwell in klippas. Ukamesha kosav, as it says in Yeshaya, uchvaydi, and my honor, Hashem says, uchvaydi, and my honor, la'acher lo eten, I won't give to anyone else. Yoni, who's going to get the covet of Hashem? The Yid. Uchvaydi lo yitain la'acher. La'acher lo yitain, I will not give to anyone else. Hine, hu nishmar. So when we are careful not to do aloi sesei, we guard nishmar min harav and nasa kelakdusha. We keep the energy of Hashem from going to ra, to bad and evil, and it stays in the keli of kedusha. So this is another reason for lo sesei. Now you ask someone in Bet Shemesh, I don't care, you pick any shoe you want, Hasidic, Litvak, Sfard, you ask them if they understand that there's two aspects in mitzvahs lo sesei. If you can find me one person who'll tell you, I'll give you a brownie point. This is Chassidus. This is Chabad Chassidus. It opens up and takes apart, like the Rambam does, in detail what a mitzvah accomplishes and what in asay and a mitzvah lo sesei. I'm not saying it's not found in other sfarim, but you have to learn it, and you have to understand it, and you have to dialogue. Let's continue. In K, last paragraph on the page, we understand from all this that the primary aspect of the wisdom of Tatum, it's the wisdom of how the infinity of Hashem will manifest itself through the 248 mitzvahs asay, and how it will remove all obstacles through the 365 leisaseh. Shazeo, next page, 121. Shazeo inyin prinas pnimius rotzna elyin. This is the idea of the inner aspect of Hashem. That there should be the revelation of godly energy in below here on earth through the fulfillment of the 248 mitzvahs. He's repeating the point again. And by removing the blockages through fulfilling 365 lo seseh, by doing both, by keeping the mitzvah say and not doing the lo seseh, we complete Nishlam Hakavana, we complete the purpose. V'harotzain, the Nesava Kodesh Baruch Hu, Liyas Leidira B'Tachtonim, that Hashem wanted there should be a dwelling place for Him on earth. Uv'derech prat, in Yesh B'chol Mitzvah, ha'ore prat is mirotzen ha'klal zeh. Every mitzvah has a detail of this overall will of God. Remember we learned yesterday, the emphasis Yoni is on the word Eilecha. May Hashem illuminate your face. Eilecha, to you. LeYisrael dafke. Look what the Rashab says, specifically to the Jew. Because who fulfill mitzvahs? Not the goyim, they don't fulfill mitzvahs. This is the inner intent. Next paragraph, kasher. I'm going a little fast because he's repeating a lot, and I've spoken it out, so therefore we can go a little further and a little quicker. Now, when this happens, guess what? At the same time, there's also leakage. How do you like that? You know, the WikiLeaks? There's always WikiLeaks. So Hashem is giving us, Yoni, good energy, but there's a little leakage, a little drips go out. Who gets them? The clippers. That's what he says. We call this the nape, N-A-P-E, the oref. The lape on him, and not the face. And who does it go to? Avi, look what it says, liyakum, to the goy. They also have a source in heaven. Their source is the 70 ministers. They receive their shefa, their influence, in a manner that's called external and back, acharayim, the backside. He repeats the point he's made throughout the Maimon. That's what we call goyim, foreign gods, Elokim Acherim. As we explained earlier. How do they get this energy? Only in a manner that's called agav, by the way. Okay? By the way. Moshe, you lost or what? By the way.
Yeah. I'm trying to wrap my head around what we're learning.
It's the same idea that we've been learning. He's talking about the difference between the way Kedusha gets its chayas and the way Klippa gets its chayas. And
but I don't understand how does Klippa. I'm not following. How does Klippa get? What is the way Klippa gets the highest?
Right.
I'm lost on that part.
Okay, so there's two ways we've been learning. Here he's speaking about one way. We've been speaking about two ways, but here he's talking about the way it gets it. It's called from acharayim, leakage, fallout.
Yeah, but what? Okay, I understand. I'm asking, what does that mean? Fallout, leakage, and this.
What does that mean? That when a Jew does an aveda, he makes some of the chayas that's supposed to go to help him and be good go to the wrong place and mess him up. And go against him, and make him problems, and have issues. That's called backside. In other words, like we said, he's going to say in a moment, like we said, the mushal. It's the dregs and leftovers that you get at a meal. Now, sometimes you can get sick from that, or it smells, or it's old, or gives you stomach poisoning, whatever. But it's coming from a meal. Yeah, but it's the leftover of a meal. It's the old food from a meal. That's the mushal. The nimshal is the chayis that normally should be going, that's healthy and good and goes into a vessel, its right place, ends up in the wrong place. And that's why I gave you the mushal of the nuclear blast. You have something that's powerful, and if it ends up in the wrong place, and it ends up with a bad explosion. Same idea. Let's continue. V'hainu al derech moshel hanal. We're in the middle of that paragraph. He gives us the moshel, right, that he mentioned earlier. B'mishne hasorim, a celebration of ministers, where the king wants to honor them by making a big feast. And after the king already gives those people who are present there food and entertainment, and he really makes them very happy. Afterwards, he opens the doors to others. He allows in those that are really shouldn't be invited in. It's, they're not on the level and of interest that the king has to those others. But he knows there are beggars outside and broken people and all that. So he opens the doors, but most of the locks are gone. So they have nibbles here, nibbles there, but derech agav. That's what he says. They get meprinas ashirayim, from the level of leftover, b'derech agav, by the way. Gam shaloi hoisa kavona aleim klal. You hear this? Did he have in mind, Yoni, when he made the party, to include beggars and others? No way. In this mashal, no, he didn't. It's an exclusive party, and if you're not a star and a fancy man and a big shot, and you're not rolling in dough and all that, you ain't coming in. It's not for you. So that's why he says, Lo hoisha kavona aleim klal. The kavanah, the intent was not for them at all. Here ends the moshel. Now Moshe, we go to the nimshel, to the moral. Kach, so too, mikablim gam hachitzonim. The word chitzonim is a synonym for klippus. So, you gotta get used to his language. Chitzonim means the external, meaning the klippus that are external to God's inner desire. So here, so too, the chitzonim, the klippus, receive yanika, nourishment, v'chayis, and vitality, me'oira liki, from the godly energy. In what manner? In a leftover manner. And the external of the supernal will. Why? This answers your question, Moshe. Why is that? How is that? Because since Hashem says, I'm making a party for my people, I'm making a party for Kedusha. I'm giving Kedusha Chayas because I like holiness. What happens is there's a spillage. But the spillage is because of us. I think that was bothering you, Moshe. The spillage, the leakage to the wrong place is because of our improprieties, our avedas, our not doing proper. That's what he said before. That there's two aspects to lo sese. One is you shouldn't get in the way. And the second thing, Yoni, is don't allow it to go to the wrong place. Those are two separate things. Don't get in the way means stand to the side. Let Hashem do what he needs to. The second thing is don't allow Hashem to give some of the holy Kedusha to the wrong side. So in other words, the first aspect is don't diminish God's energy to go to the right place. It should give it completely. The second aspect is surely don't give it to the wrong place. And that's what happens. What happens through an Aveda, through Lo Sesei, that we don't keep an Aveda, we allow some of this Oyer and Koyach to go to the wrong place. That's what he says at the end over here. That's what he says. So the Vashefa Pnimis Rotznel in the Sitra Kedusha, the Shefa that's supposed to be for the Kedusha, through mitzvahs, should be to you and not to anyone else. And it isn't that way. Why isn't it that way? Because of our Aveda. V'nimtza, the last paragraph on 121, that the fact that the klippa, the negative forces, get some of Hashem's energy, be it in the way of acharayim, the backside, but they're still getting some energy. It's exactly like we said earlier, someone who gives someone something throwing behind his back. But derech agav v'tofel, it's ancillary. It's by the way. B'shah, turn the page to 123. B'shah shemashpia la pnimi b'pnimis pnimim. Ponim. At the very same time that Hashem channels and gives his energy to those that do Hashem's will in a ponim way, in a nice way, in a happy way, in a countenance way. At the very same time, those that do not do Hashem's will cause the klippa to get the energy in a backwards way, but they're getting some energy. The Rebbe says this amount that the klippa is getting, that the negative side is getting, it's not getting the pnimius. See, you could think for a moment like this. What is the klippa getting when I do an Aveda? Oh, it's getting the real schmaltz. The schmaltz of God, the face of God, says the Rashab. No, it's not getting the schmaltz. It's getting the hinder part of God. It's getting the backside of God. But it's not getting the face. That's what he says here. That's why the klippa only receives a mere tamtzis, which means the trifles and the dregs, hanoiflim ki yedua, that fall into this world as it's known. As I told you yesterday, the story with the angels and the big buildings of Moscow, right? Those that comes from the waste of the malachim. So he alludes to this idea here too. And only after Hashem is aroused to give his countenance, his pnimius, to the holy side, only then can the klippa get the dregs. You understand? So this is the nakuda, very important nakuda. The leakage, the WikiLeaks, is only when there's something here that's really of importance. You don't have WikiLeaks if you don't have importance. If you have importance, there's a leak. What's the importance? Moshe, don't fall asleep. I see you. What's the importance? The importance is, Moshe, the importance is Kedusha. Hashem says, I want to inspire Kedusha. I want you to be inspired. Right? At the same time, Hashem says, I want you to be inspired. And let's say you don't get yourself inspired or enough inspired, and you're not so careful in this area, that area. There's a leak. There's an open. There's an openness for the klippa to creep in. But Moshe, if Hashem would not be giving at this time the energy to Kedusha, klippa would have no chance. Yes, Moshe.
Yeah, just on what you just said again, that just popped into my mind.
Go ahead.
Is it connected to the whole idea that when a Jew does a mitzvah, he forms a kli, where he creates?
Yes.
He creates something just like a high quality item is made. It's made with good quality. So if you put something in it, it's not going to leak, as opposed to a poor quality item, which could develop cracks and leak out.
Very good. I like that mushal. Great mushal. Excellent mushal. Absolutely. It's absolutely very good. See, that's the whole, learning to see this. You come up with a mushal. It's a very good mushal. Let's continue inside. Yoni, are you following, or are you in fantasy world? Where are you? Are you here?
Everywhere.
Okay. If you want to ask something, please do. When Hashem's ponim is not shining and illuminating this good side, in a revealed way, skip the parentheses. Then klipa can have no nourishment at all. V'nimtza. Therefore, he concludes and sums up his point. The davka kashiyesh amshocha p'chidas pnimis b'sirtei kedusha, specifically when there is an opportunity for kedusha, Hashem's giving kedusha. Now, something os nimshach p'chidas tamtzis hashmorim b'psoilas sitra achra. Then the sitra achra gets also the dregs. So the nimshul, the moral follows the mushul. Would the beggars have the leftovers if the king didn't make a party for the wealthy people? No. There was no party. Only because he made a party for the wealthy people, for the Yacha Badams, for the big shots. So then at the end of the party, the beggars can come in and get from the leftovers. That's the mushal. Now the nimshal, the same thing. Only when Hashem is giving his chayas to Kedusha can Klippa get. And this answers the question. Why is it and how is it that so many Jews ended up in the 60s and 70s in these, Buddhist places and India and everything else, which we discussed many times? It's because they're Kedusha. Hashem is giving a Yid who's Kedusha. So if he's giving a Yid, there's leakage possible. And that's why the percentage of Jews in all of these ashrams was so high. Why Dafke Yidden? Because the neshama is getting from Hashem. So at the very same time, there's an opening for Klippa to creep in. It's the same idea. Manis Friedman says this. I heard it years ago. I don't know if he still says it, but in the 70s and 80s. Why is it that according to halacha, technical halacha, when do you need to have a mechitza? Only twice. Davening and a wedding. And even a wedding is not. But why? Because davening is supposed to get emotionally involved. When you get emotionally involved and your emotions flare up, you let go. You become loose. You can end up doing inappropriate things or, whatever. Or not looking into your siddur, looking at the women, etc., etc. At a wedding, it's the same time. You're dancing, you're happy. Simchas chasam v'kala. So in other words, when there is such a kedusha of davening, and there is such a kedusha of a wedding yaini, it's specifically then that you need a mechitza because, my friend, there needs to be a limitation. So it's when the energy of kedusha is so powerful, at that very same time, Klippa says, I want a little bit. Let me get in. So if Kedusha doesn't make a separation and a limitation and a discipline, guess what? Klippa can get in. That's the reason. I'm not talking halachically now. We're talking about philosophically. That's the reason why those two times specifically, you need to have a mechitza. I remember in yeshiva, when we had a farbrengen and we took a little mashke, that was the time you can get a little too wild and cuckoo and do something that's really not right. When you're learning and you don't have any, l'chaim, and you're not farbrengen, you're not allowing your emotions to flow, so it's not really an issue. Not as much, at least. But when you open up the gates of Kedusha, with tremendous energy, davening and farbrengen and a wedding, at the very same time, there's an opening for klippa. That's what he says here. Kitzer. Mitzvahs lo saseh shomros shaloi yumshach oire liki b'mokim hasonui. Mitzvahs le saseh, guard. What do they guard? By not doing what we're not supposed to. Lo saseh shaloi yumshach oire liki. The godly energy should not be drawn b'mokim hasonui in a place of hatefulness, meaning of a despicable place. Stop. Pnimius harotzen, the inner will of Hashem, Torah, mitzvahs, aseva, mitzvahs, leisasei, rak li Yisrael, yor Hashem panim elecha, he quoted earlier, only for Jews. The derech agav, and by the way, nimshich ha'oros chitzonius rotzen elyon layin sorim, there's a little given to the extraneous forces, also known as the 70 ministers, and that's how they get the sitra achra, the evil side gets the waste. So you think about this. Here we have this election that's looming all over us, and and all this, and that's what I told you yesterday. It's Yad HaSodom b'Yad Hashem, Leiv Sodom b'Yad Hashem. The heart of the ministers, of the kings, of the presidents is b'Yad Hashem. It's all us. It's all us. The way we. That's what it says in the Torah Kedosha, okay? That depending on how we act, we make a difference in every aspect of the world. Let's continue. Chapter 4. Based on what we said earlier, that the inside, the pnimius, is only given avi to Yidden. And what does the negative side get? Just the dregs and the waste. Moving this, based on this, we can understand the fact that a Jew who transgresses, he draws, God forbid, top of next page, 125. He causes that the bad side gets energy and nourishment. This is what I was telling you before. Why is he able to do that? Because a Jew, by definition, inherently is shayach, is associated with pnimius. A Jew, as soon as we say someone's Jewish, what comes up is pnimius. That's who he really is inherently in his nature. And although the klippa takes a portion at the front, at the head, he goes back to what he said earlier, Moshe, which we discussed. It terminates. Evil, bad energy will not have eternity. It will have hefsek, nifsak. On the contrary, what is it? On the contrary, the Sidrach is still inevitably, and indeed the Sidrach will avenge itself of him. The Sidrach will be upset with the Jew who terminated his food. I'm hungry. You did it to me, you Jew. I'm going to get back at you. And here he says those words. And you've asked me about a year ago about George Soros. Let's see what the Hadar Hashab looks at George Soros or anyone else like him. Even though he transgressed and he's a sinner, Yisrael, who? He's a Jew. And from the perspective of his soul, he comes from the inner aspect of Kedusha, of holiness. And through the mitzvahs, that this individual, who today is a very bad transgressor, a sinner, but he did some mitzvahs before he did those averos, those sins, when he did a mitzvah, this is the Rebbe's, the Chabad Lubavitch philosophy. When you do a mitzvah, you put on tefillin. You don't know the aleph and a beis. And someone, Moshe, goes in the street, he says, come, let's do a mitzvah. What's a mitzvah? It's God's will. You're a Jew. And he says, okay. And then later on, he's doing averos without getting into details. Right? That energy that he created when he did a mitzvah sticks with him. And then later when he sins, but the Rebbe says something just the opposite here. It sticks with him, but then it energizes him in a negative way. That's what I told you. Because you have a bris, you have a mitzvah, then you can end up in an ashram and with all kinds of mishagas. Because, and someone else who had a bris and doesn't end up there, because he didn't have so much energy to begin with, whatever. In other words, the battery by some people is very strong and very powerful, and so you have the battery, and now it depends how you're going to use the battery. And if you use the battery for stupidity, you're going to do the stupidity with potency and tremendous sin, and much worse than someone who's sitting in a base medrash or walking the streets here and doesn't know what's going on. Yes, Moshe.
Sorry, I'm not sure if I was debating whether or not to say this. You mentioned George Soros. You brought the example.
That's because of Yoni.
No, but I just want to clarify something. I seem to remember when this was brought. Maybe I'm wrong. I feel like we discussed this more recently, but I believe it came out that George Soros actually is technically halachically is not Jewish.
Okay.
I'm just mentioning. I don't know if you heard that before, but that was recent. That was.
I actually did hear that. I did hear that.
Okay, so it's someone else. I mean, there's plenty, in general, it's not right. I take back. I shouldn't mention names. It's wrong. But
Rebbe, just one thing. I mean, yeah, it doesn't matter. We don't have to talk names, but I think that's a very big chiddush. First of all, I never heard that. I never heard anything that it's because of the kedusha that actually made that person who he is today. Whatever the person is. But I'm saying what's a very interesting thing is because when you talk to, I'm coming from the Litvish world. I went to Litvish yeshivas, right?
Yeah.
And we mentioned this the day before yesterday. We talked about how in the more non-Hasidish world, the non-Chabad world, where, you don't put on tefillin on somebody because, what are you going to put him on tefillin for? Because the guy, he's doing all these aveiros, and, you kind of, the hashkaf is kind of like to put the emphasis on the negative rather than the positive.
Right.
Whereby Chabad, it's like, where the chicken, what's first, the chicken or the egg kind of thing. So I think that the big chiddush what the Rebbe is saying is, he's saying that even though it's a negative, it's not really a negative. He's really saying that the jump start was good. He had a good jump start. He got stuck on the way. But that jump start could get jump started again at a certain point. Yes. But right now in the discussion, I know I made it sound that way. Right now he's explaining how it can really hurt a person. What you're saying is true, and I was phrasing it that way and too. But I realized he's going the other direction. What he's saying here is, why is it that he can fall so low and sin so much? It's because he has kedusha in him, which he has, and that's why I give you the mashal. Why is it that percentage of people who ended up with gurus and ashrams and all this stuff was so high for Yidden? Because they can fall so low. And I heard this from my teacher, Rabbi Yoel Khan. He told me this once, and I never understood it really. But I remember he told me this, and it baffled my mind, just like you're baffled. It baffled my mind at the time, and now that I'm learning Kuntres U'Maayan, it's becoming clearer, the concept. Because a Yid is full of energy. It's just like that atomic energy. You can either use it for Kedusha or for Klippa. And if you use it for Klippa, it's going to be very bad. Worse than someone who doesn't use his atomic energy in a negative way, but just it's dormant and he's a quiet sheep. But if he becomes a loud ox and an aggressive ox, he can fall so far away. And I want to tell you another thing that just comes to mind. In the business world, and I see it out here, and you guys are aware of it too, I'm sure. There are certain people, and Moshe brought it to my attention a few days ago. I'm saying not people, groups of people. And it's any group where you see an aggressiveness to their approach to life, to approach to business in particular.
And then you see others who are the same balabatim, and they have families, and they want to give tzedakah, and yet they're more tame and more relaxed. I think the same nakuda that we're discussing here is over there too. It's in a way, the more kedusha you have, the more klippa you can have. I mean, how should I say this? Because I don't want to sound like a racist. I'm not. But
it makes sense. It makes sense because we're talking about people, but think about, let's say, Chutz La'aretz, like New York or Eretz Yisrael, right? There's so much kedusha in Eretz Yisrael that the klippas are probably stronger here in Tel Aviv than they are in New York.
Well, in a way, yes. I mean, yeah, with the gay parade beginning a block, Gan Meir, a block away from where my grandchildren are being raised, and she has to escape 8 in the morning and come back 6 in the evening, so the kids shouldn't be exposed to that. A block behind, I've walked in Gan Meir. I've walked there, or the anti-circumcision, and but I'm talking about now, Hamish, our own frum community. I find, and I imagine you find the same, but I find that people who didn't grow up frum, people who didn't, are many times nicer people and more menschlich and more honest in everything they do than people who, who grew up very frum and very Hasidish and very Litvish, So what's the pshat? How am I making the comparison? The Kedusha is greater but that can flame the negativity in a worse way if used wrongly. So the guy who didn't grow up frum or grew up modern Orthodox, or what I'm saying, this is a generality I'm making, he doesn't become so aggressive and dishonest and coarse as someone else. Why? Because he had more kedusha. So when you have more kedusha, the risk is, and it's not a reason not to have kedusha, but when you open up that door, it can go into a place and really you do some very bad things. And I've seen it. I see it, and it's one of the reasons I made certain choices. Certain reason I made certain choices in my own life is to kind of stay away from people, because there's such, what do you need so many headaches for? What are you always fighting? I'm the top. Stop. Don't you see life is short? There's so much to accomplish. Anyway, Yoni, what were you saying?
Well, we're learning now about this specific thing where Jews can fall very, very far, further than non-Jews or from people. This is not just Hasidus, because I learned about this, and I don't know if it was in Rambam or something. I learned about this, I don't know, maybe 30 years ago about this.
No.
I don't know where.
I'm not saying, but the way the Rashab develops here, I mean, the development is a unique development. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying the idea doesn't exist elsewhere, but here is giving us food for thought. So, there's a concept of Kedusha, a concept of Klippa. How does each one get its nourishment? What's the purpose? I mean, that is classic Chabad Hasidus. I mean, of course you'll have the word Kedusha and Klippa mentioned in Kabbalah and in Shalom. I understand, but the development, the way he puts it together and he articulates it, that's a unique composition. Chevra, have a great day. So you see, Moshe, we got something practical out of this discussion. Baruch Hashem. See everyone tomorrow. Take care. Have a good day. Hatzlacha. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Thank you.